peace might look like after enduring such painful loss. It's been a record-breaking hurricane season, and with a new tropical threat forming in the Caribbean, it's not over yet. And the historic class of women in Congress and what it means for our future.
There's lots of hope because women are getting things done.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Lockdowns loom as COVID cases reach a breaking point, overwhelming hospitals in multiple states. Officials from coast to coast with messages like, we are running out of time and options, and we have no reserves. We have no backup. Nearly 1 million Americans have tested positive for COVID-19 in the past 13 days, and a staggering 193,000 in just the past 24 hours. As the president touted a vaccine this afternoon that will not be available to most Americans until at least next year. The realities on the ground are dire as states debate new lockdowns and new restrictions. Dr. Anthony Fauci is urging all Americans to wear a mask and take simple precautions, saying we can turn this around. Our Stephanie Ramos leads us off tonight from New York City, where officials are trying to stave off this latest wave.
Tonight, countdown to a curfew in New York City. In just hours, these restaurants and bars will be forced to close their doors early at 10 o'clock.
If we get shut down again, that 25% indoor, we will not probably going to make it.
Cases soaring to levels not seen since April, and the mayor now warning schools could close.
Parents should have a plan for the rest of the month of November, have an alternative plan for beginning as early as Monday if school is not open.
But Kendra Hall, whose kids are in 4th and 3rd grade in New York City, says it'll be challenging since she and her husband work from home.
Is that frightening to hear that schools may shut down in just the next couple of weeks?
I think we always assumed that schools at some point would shut down.
But New York is desperate to avoid a repeat of the spring, and a vaccine can't come soon enough. Tonight, President Trump with an update predicting Pfizer will get an emergency authorization for its vaccine soon.
As soon as April, the vaccine will be available to the entire general population. The vaccine will be distributed to frontline workers, the elderly, and high-risk Americans immediately.
And tonight, the administration says it expects more good news next week from Moderna, a second vaccine candidate, saying they hope to have enough vaccine doses to immunize 20 million Americans in December, and then 25 to 30 million each month after. But tonight, cases are exploding across this country, a record 193,000 in just the last 24 hours. And the worst is yet to come. The CDC now forecasting up to 282,000 deaths by December 5th, when about 2,000 Americans could lose their lives every day. Hospitals are just struggling to keep up.
It bothers me that people don't believe how quickly people can get severely sick and be intubated or die, because the numbers are real. I see this every day.
States are bracing for a flood of patients, from Massachusetts, where they're reopening this field hospital, to Reno, Nevada, where 700 beds have been set up in this hospital parking garage. This week, Republican governors in Utah, Iowa, and Ohio ordering mask mandates. This health official in Missouri begging for just that.
Our healthcare heroes have fought valiantly day after day, but we have no reserves.
But 11 states still have no mask restrictions, like South Dakota, where a staggering 68% of people are testing positive. Today, Elaine McRae was laid to rest in Mississippi. The cardiac nurse had raised 4 children as a single mom and volunteered to work with COVID patients before her own lungs were destroyed by the virus.
The compassion that you should feel when you see that number should go beyond just a statistic. It should be, that's a human being.
And don't take this virus for granted, because it is very real.
Right. Some still look at those case numbers as just statistics, forgetting the lives they represent. Stephanie Ramos joins us now from New York. Stephanie, tell us more about that new curfew set to go into effect tonight.
So that curfew goes into effect tonight at 10 o'clock across New York State. It applies to bars, gyms, and restaurants, but there's also a limit to indoor gatherings. No more than 10 people are allowed to gather inside, even if it's a private home. Local governments are responsible for enforcement, and so far, the state says that they could add additional restrictions. Lindsay.
Stephanie Ramos for us tonight. Thanks so much, Stephanie. And now with Thanksgiving fast approaching, tonight officials are warning Americans to stay at home or take major precautions if they must hit the road, fearing your turkey dinner could become another super spreader event. Our Alex Perez reports.
Tonight, dire new warnings about the dangers of Thanksgiving gatherings as experts predict the highest level of travel since the beginning of the pandemic. All this as we learn about new outbreaks linked to Halloween. One party in Missouri leading to at least 5 infections and as many as 200 high school students exposed. Chicago's mayor mincing no words.
You must cancel the normal Thanksgiving plans, particularly if they include guests that do not live in your immediate household.
We tend to feel safe with the people that we know and we love.
ICU Dr. John Coleman has seen beds once again fill up here at Northwestern Memorial. He's pleading with people not to let their guards down this Thanksgiving.
How do you space everybody out? Who prepares the food? It gets very complicated, and people tend to let down those defenses when they're with family.
Tonight, the governors of California, Oregon, and Washington issuing a holiday travel advisory, urging visitors to quarantine for 14 days and avoid in-person gatherings. Health experts say even if you are indoors, wear a mask.
We don't want this to become another set of super spreader events.
Norma Flowers died from COVID in July. Her daughter Glenda now making this plea.
Don't have big gatherings because you'd rather lose one Thanksgiving and be able to share all the rest of them with your family.
Their family gatherings usually include dozens of people. Not this year, says Glenda's sister, Christine.
We look forward to the next Thanksgiving to where, those hugs will feel even better.
Thanksgiving for so many canceled this year, but Alex Perez joins us now from Chicago. And Alex, there are growing calls tonight for families who still plan to gather for Thanksgiving to start taking precautions now.
Yeah, Lindsay, the clock is ticking for Thanksgiving. Policy Lab's advice for families is to start quarantine on Monday. They also recommend you quarantine for about 10 days after the holiday. Lindsay?
Alex Perez, thanks so much. And for more now on the COVID crisis in America, we bring in ABC News contributor Dr. John Brownstein. Thanks so much for joining us, Doctor. Now, these COVID statistics are certainly frightening since each state has its own rules about lockdown measures. What do all Americans need to do to stay safe, particularly over the coming Thanksgiving holiday?
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. I mean, we are heading into the hardest days of this pandemic just as we get to Thanksgiving, right? We're seeing this exponential growth, daily records over and over again. We're expecting 200,000 cases a day going into Thanksgiving. So you superimpose Thanksgiving travel, that's a major event to move respiratory viruses around this country. So we have to be incredibly vigilant. So that means for Thanksgiving, probably keeping the Thanksgiving to your household, limiting travel, if weather permits, trying to stay outside at a safe distance, and really keep doing our part around social distancing and mask wearing. I know it's the same things we've been saying all along. And of course, if you do want to travel and see others, then you need to be thinking about that 14-day quarantine as of today. And before that, staying away from other people, and then of course, getting those tests. Focus on the low-risk activities, small gatherings, virtual events. If we can stay away from shopping and big parades and sporting events, now is really the time that we need to clamp down if we're going to get through this winter.
Now, public health experts are advising President-elect Joe Biden to propose a so-called targeted dimmer switch strategy for imposing new restrictions after one advisor suggested that we may need a 4 to 6 week national lockdown. Which approach makes the most sense to you?
Yeah, so most public health experts agree that a lockdown is an extreme strategy. We don't want to go there. Dr. Osterholm, who mentioned this, really was saying that, of course, 4 to 6 weeks lockdown could bring transmission down, but it's not something that anyone is realistically trying to implement right now. We want to keep our schools open. We're trying to keep the economy going. And the issue is, how do you sort of tweak and create a more nuanced approach to interventions? Hotspots should see more closures, like, for instance, indoor dining. And it's really going to be about, these larger efforts like national testing, a national mask mandate. The Biden plan has many elements of this. It's much more sort of nuanced based on geography rather than some national lockdown, which we all clearly want to avoid at all costs.
Now, President Trump assured Americans tonight that a highly effective vaccine would be available to some starting next month. With such a fast development and approval process, should we be concerned about safety?
Yeah, I mean, clearly everyone wants a vaccine and they want it soon, but they also want it to be incredibly safe. The early data is super promising. We're seeing 90% efficacy, which is way more than we thought. But, the data so far is from a press release. We haven't started seeing the safety data. All signs point to it being a safe vaccine, but clearly we're going to be waiting for that data. On top of that, yes, it's been fast, but it's also being the same process as we always have around vaccines. We're using the same endpoints. The pharma companies have been incredibly careful about collecting data. So yes, we will have enough data to make a safe determination about the vaccines, and there's a lot of confidence among healthcare that we will have a vaccine that can be deployed. Now, of course, we don't have a lot of data on whether this vaccine will limit severe cases or how long immunity lasts. A lot of big questions are still open about this vaccine, but I think overall we'll have confidence that the process is going to work.
Now, with it being months before most Americans have seen, how do we combat fatigue over social distancing and mask-wearing guidelines?
Yeah, I mean, this is, among all public health people right now, this is a big worry, right? Pandemic fatigue. We still have months to go and many months before anybody can get a vaccine. So the question is, are you willing to wear a mask? A simple piece of cloth to sort of limit the transmission. We know that a national effort around masks can drive transmission down. That's a path to seeing a normal life. The question is, are we willing to do it? Right now, we're seeing many parts of this country getting overloaded, right, with hospitalizations. We're going to see deaths increasing. Are we willing to see that, or are we willing to do some of these sort of minor tweaks to our lives to get this pandemic out of control? If we can do these things, we can avoid a lockdown, because truthfully, it won't be just about pandemic fatigue. It'll be about a national lockdown to get this virus under control. And again, we're trying to avoid these major interventions at all costs.
And just because I'm sure inquiring minds want to know, is that a Dr. Anthony Fauci pillow behind you?
Yes, it is. Yeah, Fauci on the couch, always looking over.
Dr. Brownstein, thank you. Got to try and get in a light note when we can in the midst of all this news. All right, thanks so much. Now to the race for the White House. And tonight we finally have results in all 50 states. ABC News projects Joe Biden will win the states of Georgia and Arizona, flipping them both from red in 2016 to blue in 2020, while President Trump holds on to North Carolina. And that makes this the final map, with 306 electoral college votes for Biden and 232 for President Trump. But President Trump has still not conceded the election. He did, however, break his silence today in the Rose Garden remarks on the latest progress on a coronavirus vaccine. ABC's Terry Moran is in Washington tracking it all.
President walked out into the Rose Garden today. The reality has become even harder to deny. Joe Biden now projected as the winner of both Arizona and Georgia, giving him 306 electoral votes, the same number Trump got in 2016, which back then he called a landslide. But today the president acknowledged none of that, instead touting progress on a COVID vaccine.
No medical breakthrough of this scope and magnitude has ever been achieved this rapidly, this quickly.
Trump now
go away. On November 4th, you won't hear about it anymore.
Today, Trump declared the nation won't go into another lockdown. But for the first time, he seemed to acknowledge his time in the White House is running short.
Ideally, we won't go to a lockdown. I will not go. This administration will not be going to a lockdown. Hopefully, the whatever happens in the future, who knows which administration it will be. I guess time will tell. But I can tell you this administration will not go to a lockdown.
Trump's refusal to admit defeat is throwing a wrench into Biden's plan to tackle the virus. His team has been blocked from coordinating with the White House Coronavirus Task Force.
As time passes, the need to get the full access we are entitled to, and the full access that the American people want us to have, it grows each day.
President Trump's former chief of staff, you're not allowed to get their head in the game. It's about the nation. It hurts our national security. But the president and his team are living in an alternate reality.
It would look pretty bad if he did not attend the inauguration. It would sound like, look like sour grapes, wouldn't it?
I think the president will attend his own inauguration. He would have to be there, in fact.
Most Republican senators are playing along. Only 4 have acknowledged Biden as president-elect. Former President Obama tells 60 Minutes that's deeply troubling.
It is one more step in delegitimizing not just the incoming Biden administration, but democracy generally. And that's a dangerous path.
The administration's own Department of Homeland Security determined the November 3rd election was the most secure in American history. There is no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised. Still, today the president once again made the claim on Twitter that the election was rigged. But day after day, courts are rejecting his claims of fraud. Today, judges in Michigan and Pennsylvania threw out Trump's cases for lack of credible evidence.
Terry Moran joins us now. Terry, the president seemed to acknowledge that he may not run the next administration, but meanwhile, his campaign's lawsuits challenging the vote continue on. But as you said, it seems like judges aren't finding much merit in their arguments.
You know, Lindsay, they're getting tattooed. Not only are they losing cases, I think they're 1-19 at this point in courts in all kinds of states, state and federal, Republican judges, Democratic judges. But it is the language that these courts are using to dismiss these claims right on and supporters to attack the legitimacy of the vote in Wayne County. That's Detroit. They offered 6 witnesses. And the way the judge in this case dismissed those witnesses, saying he's got a few general facts with speculation and sinister guesswork. It is just the kind of language that says, get out of my courtroom. So not only are they not making their case, the judges are really kicking them out of court.
And also back to the president's pandemic response, he touted the progress on a vaccine, but he said very little today, acknowledging the current spike in hospitalizations and deaths from this virus.
You know, Lindsay, this is the way the president has dealt with this pandemic since it came into the human species back at the beginning of the year. He just wanted it to go away. He's wished it away. He said it would go down to 0. And today, once again, with this really alarming spike across the country, the president says it's going to go down. It's going to go down quickly. We've heard that so often. And it is so odd as he wrestles with his electoral defeat that really that's probably the reason he lost more than any other. His handling of this pandemic in this way, where he just didn't come to grips with it and tried to talk his way out of it. The virus can't get talked away. Lindsay?
Indeed, you're right. Okay, Terry Moran for us in the nation's capital. Thanks so much, Terry. Rivers are still rising after the remnants of Tropical Storm Ada, and a second storm system caused some of the worst flooding in Virginia and North Carolina in 25 years. 4 people were killed after flash flooding washed through a North Carolina campground. And now a new tropical wave is developing in the Caribbean. That could become the 30th named storm of the year. Here's ABC senior meteorologist Rob Marciano.
Hey, good evening, Lindsay. Just as Ada makes its way out into the Atlantic, Iota forms in the Caribbean, our 30th named storm of this record-breaking hurricane season, and it is targeting an area that's already been hit hard just within the past week. Here it is on the satellite picture. You see it getting more organized about the 300 miles south of Kingston, Jamaica, and heading to the west towards Honduras and Nicaragua. These are the 2 countries that got crushed by Ada just a week ago, with Category 4 winds and torrential rain. And look at this, a Category 3 storm expected to make landfall there sometime on Monday, right in the very same spot that Ada made landfall just a week ago. More flooding rains, similar hazards, and these people are not even close to recovering from the last storm. All right, I want to show you this interesting graphic. This shows you all the hurricane and tropical storm alerts this hurricane season. The entire East Coast got one, and the entire Gulf Coast, with the exception of one Florida county, had an alert of a tropical nature here. And